History in print. Every story you're about to hear is real.
Good evening, this is History in Print. Tonight, New Orleans, Louisiana. The year is 1890. The summer heat arrives early in this city. It settles into the unpaved streets like a second skin. River mist lifts off the Mississippi each morning and hangs between the wooden shotgun houses lining blocks like Johnson Street. Horse hooves strike cobblestones at dawn. By midday, the air smells of timber and heat, and the slow brown water moving just beyond the levee. This is ordinary life in New Orleans. The newspapers of this year tell us who lived here. One paper in particular watched closely. The Crusader was a black-owned weekly, printed in a city still deciding what freedom would mean. Reconstruction had ended more than a decade before. What replaced it was something quieter and harder to name. The Crusader named it anyway. Week after week, it recorded the life of Black New Orleans, not the version the larger papers printed. The real one. In its pages, a community organized. Churches filled on Saturday nights. Baseball clubs met on Sunday afternoons. Fraternal lodges held elections and sent delegates to conventions. And when a young man died too soon, his neighbors came to mourn him. The issue of July 19, 1890, was a single week's record. It carried news of a funeral, a church gathering, a baseball rivalry, and a lodge election. It carried advertisements for patent medicines promising cures from distant continents. Small stories, local names, ordinary life. What the papers didn't print was how much it cost to keep that life going. The Crusader printed it anyway, but the Crusader did not only carry warnings. It carried something else too, evidence that the community was alive, organized, and building. On Saturday night, July 5th, the pews of Mount Olive Baptist Church filled beyond expectation. Mount Olive was more than a house of worship. It was one of the anchors of Black New Orleans, a place where the community gathered not only to pray, but to see one another, to be seen, and to remember who they were together. That night, the occasion was a Christian entertainment, and it drew a crowd that the Crusader saw fit to notice. Managing the evening were two men the paper called esteemed, the pastor, Reverend H.P. Kelly, a man who understood that the church had obligations beyond Sunday morning, and Deacon A. Tillman, who worked alongside him to fill those pews on a July night in the Louisiana heat. The Crusader declared the event a success. Some nights, that is enough. 3 miles away, a different kind of gathering was taking shape. Israel Lodge No. 1971 of the Grand United Order of Odd Fellows was not merely a fraternal society. In post-Reconstruction New Orleans, it was a structure of mutual protection. Men who could not always rely on the courts, the banks, or the ballot gathered instead around a long table and governed themselves. On June 10th, the lodge met to conduct formal business. They needed a delegate, someone to carry their voice to the Brotherhood's upcoming convention. The man they chose was G. Wynne. The record does not tell us much about Wynne, only that his lodge trusted him to represent them. In a city that was slowly closing its doors to black political participation, that trust was not a small thing. And then there was baseball. On a Sunday afternoon on the open grass, the Hyman's Baseball Club met the Nationals. The score, if there was one recorded, did not survive. What survived was the result. The Hymans won. The Crusader covered it as a matter of civic pride, because that is exactly what it was. These were men in white uniforms on a sunny afternoon, competing by rules they had set, on a field they had chosen, watched by neighbors who had come to see them win. What the records show, something else entirely. The Hymans were already looking ahead. The following Sunday, they were set to face the Wilsons of Carrollton on Peters Avenue. One victory was not enough. It was never enough. The next opponent was already named. Church on Saturday night, lodge on a Tuesday in June, baseball on Sunday afternoon. A community at work, a community at play, and a community that grieved. Ernest Brisco was 33 years old. We do not know what he did for a living. We do not know how he spent his evenings, or whether he had children, or what he looked like standing in the July heat of a New Orleans street. The Crusader did not tell us those things. What the paper told us was this. Ernest Brisco died on Tuesday, July 15, 1890. His funeral was held the following day at 146 Johnson Street, a narrow address on a narrow street, the kind of shotgun house that lined block after block of black New Orleans. And the crowd that came to mourn him was large. That word, largely, is the only evidence we have of who Ernest Brisco was. But it is not a small word. In the summer of 1890, black New Orleanians buried their dead without the comfort of the mainstream press. The white papers did not print their funeral notices. They did not record their names. They did not acknowledge their passing. The Crusader did. The editors of that paper understood something. To print a funeral notice was not a formality, it was a declaration. It said, this man existed, this man was known, this man was mourned. His name belongs in the record. What the papers didn't print was any cause of death, no illness named, no explanation offered. Ernest Brisco was 33 years old, and then he was gone. The community came anyway. A single short notice buried in a column of weekend news, baseball scores above it, lodge elections below it. And in the middle, a man's entire life, reduced to an address and a crowd. He was mourned on Johnson Street. The record says so. That is enough. On the same page that carried word of funerals and fraternal elections, there was something else entirely. A full-page advertisement, bold, ornate, and aimed directly at the reader's deepest hopes. The product was called Monacia. The company behind it was the South American Chemical Company, headquartered, according to the ad, somewhere in the vast authority of the tropics. Jose L. de Santos was its president, a man who understood with considerable precision how to dress a product in the language of science. He placed the ad in the Crusader himself. The claim was this. A botanist named M. Bernard Deroni had discovered a plant deep in South America, Chrysophyllum glycifolium, and from it extracted a tonic that cured dandruff, stopped hair from falling, and prevented it from graying. The medical profession worldwide, the advertisement stated, had endorsed it. Chemists in Europe and America had confirmed its virtues. Before and after imagery drove the point home. Here's what the archive actually reveals. Patent medicines like Monacia were not placed in black newspapers by accident. They were placed there deliberately. Mainstream commerce had largely turned its back on black consumers. The patent medicine industry had not.
Every word you just heard came from the original newspapers. Subscribe to History in Print, a new story from the American